All right, good morning. My name is Parole Officer Wangertson. Today is Thursday, February 20th, 2025, and this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. For the record, Mr. Torres, the state of Connecticut passed and made effective October 1st, 2023, the Public Act 23-169. The next, considering parole eligibility for an individual serving a lengthy sentence for a crime committed before the individual reached the age of 21 in criminal history records erasure. You fall under this act, and this means that you were under the age of 21, that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults. The hallmark features of youth and any subsequent growth and maturity that you displayed while we're reviewing you for suitability today. The following board members are present this morning and by stating their names on the record, certify they've reviewed all statutorily required documents in preparation of this hearing.
Good morning, sir. I'm Jennifer Zaccanini.
Good morning, Mike Pohl.
Good morning, Joy Chance.
Also in attendance this morning, we have Attorney Russ Williams. Attorney Williams, if you could please state your name, your number, and business for the record.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'm sorry. That's Russ Williams for Mr.
For the record, it doesn't appear that the state's attorney is present for today's hearing. Mr. Torres, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Richard David Torres, inmate number 226205.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Torres, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. Torres, do you have any questions?
No questions, ma'am.
And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. So as previously indicated, this is the Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Richard Torres, inmate number 226205. Mr. Torres is serving a sentence of 50 years flat with no probation to follow for murder and attempted robbery and first degree with a deadly weapon. There is no victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan in place. It has been reviewed and shows that he has completed programming such as Alternatives to Violence, Voices in Tier 2. He reportedly also completed Cage Your Rage, a parenting program Beyond Fear, in a CNA course, and he presently maintains a job assignment. Utilizing the statewide collaborative risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the moderate range risk for recidivism. Mr. Torres, this is our opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to start by saying thank you for giving me this opportunity and allowing me to introduce myself before you as the person I am today. On June 29th of 1994, I, Richard David Torres, committed the most horrific act of my life by causing the loss of life to another living soul. In this horrific act, I also caused a lifelong suffering pain to the children, wife, and loved ones of a very important person. For the past 30 years, I regret every day for not apologizing to the family. Today, I'm grateful for having the opportunity to say to the family and community that I'm truly sorry for my actions. I'm so sorry for taking the life of the victim, an important figure of their lives. I realize that anything I say or do from here on forward can never change what I have done. But I pray that God will allow you all to find it in your hearts to forgive me one day. Today, I can guarantee that I'm not that same 20-year-old person anymore. To my victim's family, my family, and the state of Connecticut, I'm deeply sorry for the reckless act and horrific actions I caused. Growing up, I always believed that I had a normal upbringing, but it was never true. I was raised by my mother, Maria Torres, and my stepdad, Santiago Pagan Jr., whom I've always considered to be my dad. I remember family vacations, family events, great birthdays, and holidays that were spent with family. With those events came physical fights between my mom and stepdad. I never knew what they fought over, but I remember that a day filled with happiness was always crushed with fear and anxiety. I remember both my parents drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes and marijuana, thinking it was the coolest thing to do. I would sneak marijuana and beer out of the house to consume with a friend. On my 13th birthday, my mother gave me permission to smoke freely. Writing this was very hard because I feel like I'm speaking ill of my mother. But I also wanted to be known that she did the best she could in raising 6 children, teaching me morals and how to love. The qualities I have today are because she instilled them in me. My mom was epileptic and would have episodes so bad that she would be committed to hospitals because of memory loss. It was so severe when I was younger that I remember caring for her with my brother. Had it not been for my stepdad, Santiago Pagan Jr., or Papito as I would call him, we wouldn't have known how to care for her. He always been caring to us, keeping a job as a trucker to provide for us. He was a great role model to me. I remember being placed in foster care. What I remember most was that my brother and sister were placed with family, and I was placed in an unknown home with strangers. Even though I was placed in a safe environment, I always asked myself why I couldn't be placed with family. Thinking that I was not loved was very tough on me. Bouncing between schools and always being smaller in size, I got picked on. Not having my big brother or dad around became hard on me. So I learned at a very young age to act out before I was the one to be picked on. Before I knew it, our family was back together and all was good until I saw my mother throwing my dad out of the house after a huge fight. My parents were getting divorced, and that was devastating to me, losing my dad and my only father figure. I see that today. It's when I started to misbehave to the point of failing in school and getting into trouble with the law. I didn't understand what transpired with my parents, but I held it against my mom. So when she tried to discipline me, I always fought against her, not knowing that she was only trying to help me find the right way in life. After being arrested as a juvenile, I was placed in Connecticut Junior Republic, where I spent around 2 years. During that time, my mom was building another abusive relationship that didn't sit right with me. Elvin was a good man. He just had a disease. He was an alcoholic and drug addict. Being around him caused my mom to consume more poison, bringing her down to her lowest point. Around this time in life, I was 16 years old, trying to figure out my way in life without proper guidance. This is when I found the Latin Kings, a street gang who took me in as a family member of their own. Now I had a bigger family, never questioning if I was loved, always knowing that I would be safe with them. No more bullying. What I didn't realize is that it was all a fraud, and my life would spiral a lot faster. Somehow, being in a gang, I got my GED, vocational educational diploma, and driver's license at Westover Job Corps in Chicopee, Massachusetts. Now realizing that my use of alcohol and marijuana progressed, with me experimenting with other drugs leading me to a destructive path. Upon completing Job Corps, I started working as a bridge painter at various locations in Connecticut, and still being involved with gang activity until one day I found myself laid off and nowhere else to turn but the gang and drugs. June 29th, 1994, I found myself thinking of how I would spend the day with no cash. I came up with the worst idea: to rob someone of their cash. That day I was driving around with Miguel Catala and Alexis Alvarado. We decided on the same thing: to rob the store owner on Baldwin Street in the south end of Hartford. Neither of us anticipated the outcome of that day. If I could only have had the strength I have today, we would not be here in this moment. But unfortunately, I didn't, and I caused the worst act upon a respectable family. On that afternoon, we decided to go through with the robbery. Upon arriving at the scene, I had this gut feeling and didn't want to move forward. Being that I was easy to persuade, it didn't take much but a little push, and that's what happened. Miguel pushed on my seat and said, "Let's go." That's when I got out the car, ran into the store, jumped over the counter. Seconds later, Catala entered as well. We were both armed at that point. The victim was trying to disarm me. When Catala entered, I told him to shoot. My firearm was not loaded to fire. When Catala pointed his firearm at the victim, he then let go of his hold on the firearm. He pushed the panic alarm, put both arms up. During all this, I armed my firearm. When the victim saw that Catala was not going to fire his weapon, he continued to grab hold of the firearm I had. The firearm went off, and I shot the victim into the chest area. I told him to get on the floor, but instead he turned around and started to run. He took a few steps and put his arm out as if to reach for something. In this quick moment, I thought he was reaching for a weapon, in which I proceeded to fire the weapon. Fire the weapon again at the victim. Today, I know that the victim was not reaching for a weapon, but reaching to brace his fall. After all that, I tried quickly to open the cash register and was unable to. After that, I ran out to the car and we drove away. I sit every day and ask myself what I have done differently. And the answer is simple. Could I woke up that morning and went job hunting? During my incarceration, I completed various self-help programs, which gave me information to help me be the person I am today. Programs like Cage of Rage, Anger Management, adventure-based counseling, gang awareness, cultural awareness, close custody phase, beyond fair, alternatives to violence, parenting, certified nurses assistance program, voices, and living in balance tier 2 program. All these programs have helped me in one way or another, but tier 2 has had the biggest impact. It is a program that deals with the root of addiction. This is when I truly discovered I was self-medicating due to childhood trauma. It helped me realize that the choice of using alcohol and drugs only caused more harm to myself and others. I realize today that there are better choices when feeling down, that I don't need to consume alcohol or drugs to feel better, let alone to cause harm to myself or others. Other programs that have had an impact on me are Voices and adventure-based counseling. Voices taught me that due to my poor decisions I made in life, created a chain of victims, and many people were affected by my poor decision making. Adventure-based counseling dealt with trust and communication, something I've always lacked, but now have the skills. Since my incarceration, I have had more than enough time to reflect on the person I was then and the person I am today. sitting here today, I can honestly say that it hasn't been an easy road for me, but it has been rewarding. I became interested in striving for myself, learning new trades along the way. Being able to work has been therapeutic for me. I have worked alongside great people, and if not for that, I don't know what would have become of me. I utilize my time in learning and working different trades, from janitorial work, cutting hair as a barber, being a certified nurse's assistant in the medical field, working with maintenance department as a welder, fabricator, and being a 7-day plumber, working as a property clerk, and now I am recently employed by the CEC clothing factory as a machine operator, making t-shirts, in which I was recently promoted as a floor counter. All these jobs allowed me to improve my communication skills. The most rewarding job was working as a CNA. Rewarding because I worked along staff and hospice volunteers, dealing with terminally ill patients. Being able to provide some sort of comfort to another human being gave me a stronger drive to being a better person every day. Maybe one day I will have the opportunity to be recertified so that I may be able to volunteer my services in that field. But if you ask me today what I see myself doing in the future, it would be me going to school to pursue a career in the plumbing or cosmetology field, or obtaining a CDL. What I have learned and have a profound respect for is that I have to continue to work hard and earn my share. Today I sit before you all to say that I am not that 20-year-old. I have developed a strong sense of empathy and awareness for the impact of my actions on the victim, his wife, children, and community. I use my time wisely to be able to transform my outlook on life and realize my true responsibilities to my family and community. I'm aware that I alone have the ability and power to direct my life in a positive manner. I can respectfully say that I have taken responsibility and accountability for my actions. I have taken all the steps to be a better person and would like a chance to be a productive citizen again. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Torres, thank you very much for your statement. We appreciate you putting your thoughts down on paper. I know that's very helpful, and you provide us with a lot of good information. This panel has, in preparation of today's hearing, reviewed your file extensively. Things such as your police reports, the sentencing transcript from the time of your offense, your records throughout your incarceration, to include certificates, disciplinary reports, evaluations from facilitators and work supervisors. In addition, we did receive correspondence from Attorney Williams and a report from social worker, oh gosh, I'll mess it up.
Simolin.
What is it?
Simolin.
Simolin.
Simolin. Yeah,
Simolin,
thank you.
yes, thank you. So anyhow, we're very well versed in your case. We do have some additional questions. When we're done with our questions, I don't believe we have any input from the Office of Victim Services here today. And I also don't, oh, actually we may from the State Attorney's Office, and your attorney will have the opportunity to speak. Okay, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll begin our questioning with my colleague, Mr. Pohl. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Torres.
Good morning.
Thank you for that detailed statement. Oftentimes we have to dig to have somebody who's in front of us talk about exactly what happened. And you did that. You explained exactly what happened. And it's tragic. Because a family man lost his life, you know, trying to just make a living for himself and his wife and, you know, family. And you talked about how you got there. And that was, for me, that was really important information. Oftentimes, you know, and why we're here today is because things happen early in life that send a person down a certain road. And fortunately, in this case, somebody lost their life. In order for you to be in there and to turn it around. I did have a question because I kind of missed it, but when you were talking about not having guidance growing up in that period of time, where you joined the Latin Kings and found that place where imagine, you know, what you believe to be the family, the support and thing that gang life appears to have, but really doesn't. How old did you say you were?
I was 16 years old.
You were 16. You know, in reading your file, you've done quite a bit inside. Early on, the programming that you took that was in the 90s, and then again a little bit 2000, 2001, 2008. You know, there was some SRG back there originally. And there had been other types of disciplinary reports that really stopped after that programming took place. But one thing really persisted, and that's something that I really want to get to because, again, what appears is that after you had programming, things turned around. And that has to do with your last 5 tickets. There's 27 there altogether. The biggest bulk of them happened before the year in or before the year 2000. But there's contraband tickets and there's refusal to give specimen tickets that are the most recent 7 that went from 2020 through December of 2022. Can you talk about that? Can you? I know that you talked about Tier 2 and how that you learned about self-medicating. I'll also preface that by saying that the evaluation that you have from DOC staff says that you did excellent across the board when you took Tier 2. Can you reflect? Because one of the things that really has me like hesitant here is substance use because it played such a role in the offense itself. So can you talk about that, please?
Well, basically, I've always just grown up thinking that alcohol and smoking marijuana was a normal thing that people did. It wasn't serious. And I actually grew up thinking that. So, since 2020, going through the epidemic, being locked in here, basically 23 hours a day, put a lot of stress on me. Not seeing my family, and at times not being able to make phone calls. And it just drove me to make a poor decision and want to just drown myself and consume myself with any type of something to cover that up. And my way was just thinking of getting high. You know, and smoking marijuana would be the easiest way. But it's just that I've learned that I was causing more harm to myself. Every time I consumed, I was causing more harm to myself. Not just myself, but with me catching tickets and DRs, I was affecting everyone else. My family, my son, and just peers in here that actually looked up to me. And I had a difficult time with losing my mother. I lost my mother in 2022. That's when I caught my last 3 tickets. I didn't want to cause any more pain upon myself, my family. I ended up seeking help, and that's what drove me to participate in Tier 2. After writing a request to them, they said my drug score was way too low, that I could not participate. I had to write 3 requests after that, seeking the help. And eventually, the counselor there at Cheshire CI took me in. And I just realized that I was just covering up any pain that I had from my past. Anytime I just sit back and start thinking, that's what I ended up doing, just trying to cover it with any type of narcotic or any type of drug that I could. And it's not the choice that I want to make anymore. I no longer want that. Now I know I can seek help. Now I know I can go and talk. There's caring people out there. When I first came into the facilities, being incarcerated, I always felt like everyone was here to punish me. That's not true. There's actually people in here who care. I've had officers come up to me, asking me, Mr. Torres, are you all right? You know, if anything, you can always come and talk to me or ask me for anything. That just goes a long way and means a lot to me. It took me a while to realize that I can seek help, and there are people here that will help you.
So, those are the most recent tickets. And so suitability for parole rests in my confidence that you can go out there and not reoffend. So to carry the discussion forth of what we were just talking about, what's your plan in the community to deal with this? And go ahead.
My first plan is, I've always found that just keeping a job in general keeps me occupied and keeps my mind stimulated in a positive manner. One thing that my sisters always stressed to me is to seek counseling in here. Counseling in here is not the same as on the street, on the community. It's a little bit different in here. I've tried seeking counseling in here, and if we're not trying to commit suicide, or if we're not trying to cause harm to someone else, then basically you're just on your own. My plan is to join my sisters. I have two sisters, Kathy Galarza and Bianca Santiago, that attend counseling, and they're always strongly advising for me to do that, and I'm willing to join any counseling program. And here, when I'm stressed, I like to play handball, do some type of sports, and listen to music. Found ways to just calm myself down and not to think so much or stress myself out. But I plan on continue doing NA programs, AA, any type of community service. And whatever the parole, my parole officer at the time will be willing to advise me to do to help me get through that.
What's your experience been with AA and NA?
With AA and NA, I attended a few meetings when I was young, in the 90s. Honestly, in here, I seen guys going in there and talking about not getting high and then going into the block and getting high. So it's just a bad experience for me in here. On the most part, I stopped going. It was a turn off for me.
What's your perception about how that would be different in the community?
I seen the volunteers that come in here, and the counselor that actually did the Tier 2 program discussed on his recovery. You can see when someone truly wants to change, and I know on the street it might be similar, might be the same. I'm looking forward to being introduced to, those meeting people who genuinely really want to change and genuinely care and want you to see you recover and not fall back.
Do you know when the last time was that you had a substance use evaluation?
Substance abuse evaluation.
Yeah. You know how you said your score was too low?
Yes.
You know when the last time it was that somebody did an evaluation with you?
They don't do evaluations in here with anybody, sir. They just give the,
So
they
it's,
do-
so it was in classification in the 1990s that they gave you the two?
They do that, yeah, it's just stood as a tool throughout the whole progression.
Which is just not accurate. There's no way that it can be accurate.
Exactly.
The offense that you committed going into it, you said that it was related to alcohol and drugs.
Okay.
And you've had substance use infractions while you've been in. It's like, yeah. But I'm really happy that you were persistent with tier 2 and wrote to several times to get in, right? Have you ever heard of recovery coaches?
Recovery coaches?
Yeah.
Yes. In tier 2, I've heard of it.
What's that?
In tier 2, I've heard of it.
And what did they talk to you about related to a recovery coach?
Recovery coach is like it's like having a sponsor. It's, someone who's gonna be there and help you get through it. Someone who you can fall back on and rely on to direct you in the right direction.
So what do you think about that as part of your recovery plan?
It's what I'm looking forward to, sir.
So that's, yeah.
That's, excuse me,
Yeah, go ahead. That's what you're looking forward to.
in the future, yeah, that's one of my plans. I'm not gonna be able to do it on my own. And I know I'm gonna need a recovery coach or a sponsor. So,
Do you feel like there's a need to do it on your own?
no, I'm not gonna be able to.
That's some humility. That's important. So you're going to go out to a halfway house if you grant a parole.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that you said that you'd be interested in doing is tree cutting.
Yes, sir.
Some experience with that when you were younger?
No experience. I just I'm one of them guys that I'm a hands-on type person. I know I can pick that trade up. I'm willing to learn. I'm always willing to learn anything new. A friend of mine came across my path recently and gave me the information on a job opportunity, being that I do get parole.
So in your remarks, you also talked about trying to get recertified as a CNA.
Yes, sir.
Is that something is that an option that's out there?
My grandmother is very old at this time, and she attends this center, and I'm so grateful that she has that. And it's just, I'm passionate about dealing and helping out, especially the elderly. So when I hear of her going to the center, I always imagine myself helping out at that center with her and the other individuals there, or any center that it may be.
So along that line, you also talked about in your remarks, and I think this is important for our consideration. You talked about working with the people in hospice in there as well. What did you take? What did you take away from that?
What did I take away from working with hospice patients? It's an experience. It's an experience in here watching someone deteriorate with no one else. So just being able to provide some type of comfort to an individual gives me gratification. In doing so, I always looked at it like that was my way of giving back. Just gratifying.
That's definitely part of it. You know, it's when somebody's done what you have, it's important for me to be able to see that you have a different respect for life. During incarceration, going through that is one of those ways of being able to see life different. So I'm glad that you had that experience. We received several letters in support. You did say that you wanted to get involved with a nonprofit, but there weren't any real specifics there in terms of what. You know, I don't know the outcome of today, but I do know that you know, that when things come out and you come back into the community, you have the ability to share with others what you've been through. And your life experience can help others not commit the offense that you committed. And with what you just said about one of the ways of giving back, that's always going to be a lifetime thing for Mr. Armenta. You know, it's like that's something that you need to carry with you. And you need to turn that into something where you might be able to help someone else, not cause what Mrs. Armenta had to go through. So I hope you keep that at the forefront of your mind. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Okay, Mr. Torres, I do want to go back to your crime. We're not here to retry your case, but there are some inconsistencies that I'd like to clear up. So I read in some documents that the reason you were robbing the store is because you owed money to a drug dealer and you wanted to get more money to buy more drugs to sell. Is that the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you were selling drugs at the time. Were you using drugs at the time as well?
Yes, ma'am.
What drugs were you using?
Smoking, weed, marijuana, and heroin.
Okay. Alcohol? I thought I read alcohol as well. Were you drinking?
Yes, ma'am, alcohol.
Were you working at that time?
No.
Okay. All right. As my colleague mentioned, this really was a horrible tragedy and senseless. I do take issue, and the reason I want to raise this issue is because I do believe you take responsibility, but it can at times appear that you minimize. And I'm not sure if you know what that means, but when you make comments to the parole officer in your interview, and I think you did it again here today, that the gun went off, the shot went off. Well, we know that guns just don't go off, right? So that makes it sound as if you're portraying it as an accident, and it was not an accident. You shot your victim. So be careful with your words. When you say things like the shot went off, it's more appropriate to say, I shot him. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you regret not showing remorse to your victim's family at sentencing?
Every day. Every day I regret it.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you've learned from the Voices program that sometimes it is very valuable to a victim and their family just to hear those words, just to hear an acceptance of responsibility and an apology and remorse. You know, I think it makes it much more difficult. And I understand you were young at the time, 20 years old, and maybe didn't know how to take full responsibility, but it makes it so much harder. We hear all the time victims' families say, you know, he just either laughed or chuckled or stood there with no emotion, or it just seems so much colder. So I'm glad you were able to express that remorse today in the event that anybody is listening, because this is a public hearing and it is live streaming. You've taken a lot of good programs. You certainly have attempted to turn your life around. My colleague mentioned with you your CNA work. Where did you do that? Where did you work in the hospice?
I started at Corrigan Correctional Institution. Then I came here, and this is where they have the hospice program.
So where were you certified as a CNA?
I was certified at Corrigan Correctional Institution.
Okay, but you actually did the work at Osborn?
Yes, ma'am.
And what year was that?
Right off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I want to say around 2015.
Yeah, I think that's about right. And how long did you hold that position?
6 months.
And what happened after the 6 months?
To this day, I don't know.
Were you fired? Were you let go? Why didn't you do it any longer?
I wasn't fired. They just per administration, I was relieved of my duties as long as two other gentlemen. I was offered a position back at Corrigan or Bridgeport County.
Okay, but you didn't go to either.
No, ma'am.
Okay. You're receiving 12 days of statutory good time a month, right, off of your sentence.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were receiving at one point 4 or 5 days a month for job credit.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
ended when you got your disciplinary reports a little over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you've been working now, you said, since April of last year in the clothing factory?
Yes, ma'am.
So why aren't you getting job credits for that?
It's not considered a 7-day job.
Well, how many days are you working?
6.
Oh. What are the hours that you work?
From 8:15 to 5:30 in the afternoon.
So that job credit is only for 7-day jobs.
Yes, ma'am.
Understood. Okay. I will tell you that the most concerning part of your case for me is these disciplinary reports. You know, on the one hand, you're taking these good programs, you're working. On the other hand, you're using drugs while you're incarcerated. You're I don't know if you're selling the drugs or just possessing them as well. You have a cell phone, which is a huge security breach in a correctional facility. Where'd you get the cell phone?
Got it off an individual in here.
You bought it from somebody in prison?
Actually, I traded.
And what did you need a cell phone for?
The reason for the cell phone was to have communication with my mother.
Why weren't you having communication over telephone or tablet or whatever other means you have in there?
At that time, we only had this regular phone. We didn't have the tablets. My mother got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to spend as much time as I could with her. I knew that I wasn't be able to get no visits with her, so I got the phone for that reason, so I can see my mother and just talk to her whenever I wanted to.
One of your sanctions for your tickets was loss of your tablet. You're saying you didn't have a tablet at that time? I'm looking in the system, and it says
when my mother got diagnosed with cancer, we didn't have the tablets, ma'am.
But okay, when was that diagnosis?
I say the beginning year of 2022.
Okay, the ticket was the end of 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, you did have a tablet. So why did you still have the phone?
That's a question that my sister always asked me.
And, you know, Mr. Torres, I'm very sorry to hear that about your mom, but that's real life. Our family members get sick, and we can't break rules and laws when things like this in life happen. You know, when COVID hit, we were all part of that pandemic. We didn't all go out and use drugs. You understand that you have to find better coping mechanisms.
And that's why I decided to take the Tier 2 program. Give me the tools to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's what I struggled with throughout my whole sentencing. I'm still struggling today.
Yeah, you have to, you know, and I don't know what program gives you those tools, but you have to find a way, for sure. We did get a letter from the tree company with a job offer for you. What's the name of the tree company?
CM Tree Services. The owner is
It's a friend of yours?
He's a mutual friend of a friend.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, you've been incarcerated for almost 31 years, and you'll finish this 50-year sentence right around 35 years of time served. You're running out of time, so you really need to gain as many tools as possible in whatever time you have left there. We want you to be successful. And yeah, I do see some change, but I'm not sure you're quite yet ready to be out in the community. Thank you for speaking with me, Ms. Chance.
So, Madam Chair, you asked most of the questions that I had, but I just had one question for Mr. Torres. Do you think that you have matured since the date of your crimes?
Yes, ma'am.
How?
Um, I didn't think when I was younger. I just didn't think. Not even just younger until I was in my 30s. Always had a hard time rationalizing how I think. My thought process was always, how am I gonna get by this to make me feel better without realizing the cause of my choice would have on someone else.
So,
I always made poor decisions. With that being said, I feel like I've matured by me realizing that I do have issues and that I do need help. It took a lot for me to seek help from others. I've always thought I can do it on my own. And taking a Tier 2 program, I realized that I can't do this on my own. I can't. It hasn't been working, and it's not going to work with me doing it on my own.
So Mr. Torres, for me, it simply tells me that yes, you are on the road to maturity, because when you have matured or grown, one of the success measures that you use is in your decision making. And it's obvious, just going back to when you committed the crimes, you were using drugs. And during your incarceration, you continued to use drugs up to 2 years ago. And then you talked about during the period of COVID, when you continued to make poor decisions. So do you understand what I'm saying? That in terms of being mature, it's that we are making better decisions in our lives. And you are on the road, Mr. Torres. I just think that you still have some more work to do. And one of the ways that I know you're on the road is because today you have acknowledged that you still experience problems with depression and you have certain issues surrounding receiving counseling to deal with that. So I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So I wish you success on your continued journey, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll note again for the record, we have no input today from the Office of Victim Services.
Thank you. At this time, we for each of the attorneys present their opportunity to make a statement. Attorney Walcott, at the onset of this, before you get started with your statement, if you don't mind identifying yourself for the record, indicating your juris number as well as your business address for us, please.
Yes, it's Sharmise Walcott, State's Attorney for Hartford Judicial District. And my juris number, I will provide that to you in just a moment. I do recall you asked for it last time. I think it's 423-818. But I'll get the exact number for you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank
If you have any comments or statements, remarks of any kind that you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you. Very brief. I did listen to Madam Chair's questions and the commission members' questions, and they really address some of the things that I wanted to address here before the board. But I do want to highlight just a few things. I did want to highlight the difference of the summary, the factual summary that was noted in the PSI. If the board has access to the PSI, then I will not read it. But this is the original PSI from 1995. But the summary of the offense is very different than the summary that Mr. Torres puts forth today. And it's a summary that serves as the basis for his original sentence of 50 years on the murder and 20 years on the attempted robbery. But it's that Hartford PD received a call for shots fired at a local convenience store. When they went in, the owner of the store was lying on the floor in the rear of the store, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Emergency medical technicians were summoned. They pronounced the victim dead at the scene. The investigation revealed that on the afternoon of the killing, Richard Torres had been with 3 friends smoking marijuana and drinking when they decided to rob a store for profit. While the offender, Mr. Torres, was driving the car, they obtained a machine gun and drove back to the market that they were hanging out at. Mr. Torres and his co-defendant exited the vehicle and went into the store, where Torres accosted the victim behind the cash register. Torres then fired a number of shots in rapid succession into the victim and tried unsuccessfully to open the cash register. I do not attend all parole hearings, but I do attend some where the safety of residents of Hartford and Greater Hartford, I believe, are at risk. And when I read Mr. Torres's decision information summary, there were a few things that jumped out at me. I'm going to start with page 6. He identified Waterbury and Hartford as the top 2 locations that he would like to go to, that he would like to be placed in for his community release and kind of work on the things that he has to work on. And my difficulty with that is that Hartford is the very community that Mr. Torres terrorized. It's the very community that he came in and he executed someone for no reason. There were no indicators that he demanded money in advance. There were no indicators that the shop owner, attempted to struggle. As he said in his answering some questions from Mr. Pohl, he placed blame on this shop owner, right? He's placed blame on his friends. His friend pushed his seat, and all he needed was that little push to get out of the car and to go forward with their plan for the robbery. He says he told the victim to get on the ground, but he reached, as if the victim did something wrong. That victim did nothing wrong. Torres was in the driver's seat that day. They went and obtained a machine gun and went back to a store and executed a man. Sometimes we have to we have to be okay with some crimes just deserve punishment. That's what they deserve. It's what the community deserves, to be free from someone who's tormenting him. Mr. Torres's criminal record at the time was somebody who was tormenting this community. In 1993, he had a criminal trespass, theft of a firearm, carrying a pistol without a permit, and then failed to appear when lawfully and legally required to do so before a court of law. 94, possession of narcotics, sale of other illegal drugs. Again in 94, a larceny third, taking things that don't belong to him. He was charged with failure to appear. And then finally, in August of 94, we have the murder and attempt to commit robbery first. Mr. Torres was making poor decisions back then, and he continues to make those poor decisions today. I don't know if the victim's family is listening in, but if they are listening in, what they're going to hear is that the man that murdered the victim's husband and the victim's fathers has been doing good for about 2 years, because his last set of disciplinary tickets were in 2022 for the same things he was struggling with when he committed these heinous acts. So in 2022, he's caught with marijuana and making his own alcohol inside of a correctional facility. In 1994, when these acts happened, he's sitting outside smoking marijuana and drinking. Where's the change? Where's the rehabilitation? Where is that narrative that shows Torres has reflected, Mr. Torres has reflected on his actions and said, I'm going to do better. When I get out into the community, I don't want to be the same person. I want to be better. I want to do something new. There's nothing new here. When we go through his decision tree, again, page 5, he began a job in April of 2024 where he's working in a clothing factory. There was another job where he was let go, and it's a lot left to read between the lines, and I'm not even going to approach that. But April 2024, he starts the job. He says that he talked to mental health staff, quote, a few times, mainly when people have passed away. when inquired, when Mr. Pohl inquired of him about, getting the treatment, he says he doesn't get counseling because it's not the same as on the outside. Well, no, it's not the same as on the outside. You're not on the outside. You committed a crime, you're being punished, there's punishment. There is counseling on the inside. And I think his statement of laying the blame for him not getting counseling at the counselor's feet is a problem. DOC counselors work hard. They're in there trying to help people reform. And he says, well, it's not the same as the outside, so he's not going to go. When asked why he doesn't go to AA or NA, he says, well, because others go in there and say they're not going to use, but then they get high on the block. So because other people aren't doing the right thing, he's not going to take advantage of substance abuse counseling that he needs. And then he sits before this board and says, I'm ready to get out. Let me back out into society. Let me back out into the community. Oh, and by the way, put me right back where I was in Hartford. That's unfair to the community, and the community does not deserve that. What Mr. Torres needs at this point is to take a little bit more time, invest a little bit deeper in himself and his recovery, so that when he does come back out into this community, he is not reoffending. He is prepared. The high risk score that he has on page, page 3 of his decision information summary, high risk because of education, employment, and financial situations, that he addresses that. When we talked about the employment and the decision tree, he didn't remember the name of the company, right? He needs to take some time and invest in those skills because there's skills that need to be built. So that's the state's position. I thank you for the time and thank the board for their consideration.
Thank you, Attorney Walcott.
Thank you. Attorney Williams, if you have any remarks you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you, and good morning. First, I do want to thank the board for the opportunity to speak and to do so virtually. I know that I requested this and I requested the 9 a.m. I would love to be at Richard's side right now, but I am currently in the middle of evidence in the trial, and I'm trying to give both of my clients as much individualized attention that they deserve. I appreciate all of the comments and concerns and questions from the board and the comments from State's Attorney Walcott. And I know that Richard does as well. From the moment I met him, I don't think that he underscored or sought to distance himself from his actions or from the crime itself. I do understand that some of the language that he used, I know that the board questioned him on it, and I know that State's Attorney Walcott mentioned it. I understand how that can be perceived, and I'm not here saying that it wasn't meant that way, but in getting to know Richard, it is my opinion that that he was not placing blame on anyone but himself. I had some pre-prepared remarks, but I want to get right into that. I think it's extremely important. I read his statement and I thought about asking him to change the wording that his co-defendant gave him a little push. I don't think that he was trying to say that someone else encouraged him or started or made him do this. I think he was giving the board his honest recollection and his earnest view of the juxtaposition of who he is, who he believes he is as a person, with the facts that he did such a terrible thing. And I think a lot of times that's really hard to come to terms with. So I think that he honestly had a feeling of anxiety, of fear, of a conscience there, and he admits he is easy to persuade, and he stated all that it took was a little nudge. I don't think that he's saying that someone forced him. In fact, I think he's saying the opposite. All that it took was a little nudge, and the accident, or the incident, excuse me, occurred. I also, for the same reason, and appreciate Attorney Wolcott's statement. I think that if anyone is listening and hears Mr. Torres' recollection of the incident and believes that he is in any way blaming the shop owner, I can tell you that from what I know of Richard, that is not the case. He takes full responsibility for his actions, for shooting the shop owner, Mr. Armenta, and for killing him. I think, again, that is the difficulty in internalizing and dealing with the juxtaposition of who I believe myself to be with the facts of my life. To this day, I still don't think he can tell you why he pulled the trigger, but he will tell you that he pulled the trigger. And I certainly can appreciate, the gun went off comment. He's not maintained that as a, oh, the gun, it was just a thing. He has said to me multiple times that, yeah, I did this, I shot him. And he should have certainly been more careful with his words here. But I can assure the board that in my experience, I certainly don't think that he is placing the blame on anyone else. I think the most important and the most apparent thing to me about Richard is that he has a willingness to be vulnerable. And I think that is something that is maturity. To answer some of the board's question, I think, have you matured? I think that is one of the biggest and most important signs of maturity. When he was young, he struggled with feeling accepted, feeling love, feeling support. He didn't want to say the things about his childhood because he didn't want to speak ill of his mother. But he recognizes that there were some things throughout his childhood, a lot of things that led him to feel alone, which led him to seek comfort in a community that happened to be a gang. I think guilt, shame, and even remorse can be incredibly powerful feelings, and feelings that a lot of people will run away from and will replace with denial and defiance. Richard hasn't run away from those things. He was earnest, I believe, in his answers to the board's questions, that he cannot do this alone. He will need help. And his willingness to seek help, I think, is the most important step, because thinking he could do this alone is what got him here in the first place. I think it was very telling when he spoke of his work in hospice. You saw him experience some emotion, and I believe I'll quote him saying that, watching someone deteriorate with no one else is when the emotion came out. So I think he felt the pain that has really been inside of him his whole life, of being alone and seeing someone else deteriorate and then ultimately pass while alone triggers those same feelings. I don't remember which board member, somebody said they acknowledged some humility. I think that was a great word. And I think going hand in hand with that is vulnerability. Allowing yourself to trust someone, allowing yourself to feel connected with someone. I think that is the most, the largest sign of maturity that someone can make, especially someone with substance abuse problems. Now I know there are multiple different reasons to seek substances. A lot of times it is to avoid a feeling rather than to seek the feeling that the substance gives you. And in Richard's case, substances is an avoidance tactic. And that happens when you don't look inward, you don't seek to address the feeling, to acknowledge the feeling. I think that Richard has become willing and able to look inward, see what he is running from, and stop that before it starts. Obviously, he has still made mistakes throughout the years, and he will acknowledge and has acknowledged those. I think it's very telling, the history. I think it was less than a year since after his sentencing that he began his programming. This is not somebody who waited until they could see the light at the end of the tunnel before beginning programming. He was still a young man when he voluntarily joined this programming. That turned into education and certificates and work experience. He is a jack of all trades, and attached with our memorandum are glowing reviews from all of his counselors that had any supervision or experience with him working. He's maintained jobs that others have taken advantage of, like being a barber, being a laundryman. Others can take advantage of that for personal gain. And specifically stated in that evaluation is that Richard is not someone that does that. He's someone that arrives to work early, eager, willing to help others, willing to go above and beyond. We mentioned the tree service. I think he understands the importance of having something in place. I don't think that's something he wants to do for the rest of his life, but he knows that if he were to be released, he would need to do something, to have something in place. So that's the beginning, the tree service. Thankfully, he has a friend who reached out to me. I did not reach out to him, and provided me with that letter, as well as an attachment to his website. And that is in Beacon Falls, which is close to his preferred destination of Waterbury. I obviously was not there at the sentencing in, I believe, 1995. I can't speak to whether or not he showed remorse. I read the transcript, and that can only tell you so much. I can tell you that he pled guilty. And I did write in my memorandum, there's a caveat that it was under the Alford Doctrine, but the judge clarified that that was specifically as to the element of intent. And again, I think that goes to he couldn't recognize or juxtapose or reconcile, his actions with who he believed himself to be. But he stood there and said, my actions, my pulling of the trigger caused the death and no one else's. And he did not contest that. He did not go to trial. And in fact, on the day of sentencing, where he believed he would face a maximum of 40 with a potential for less, the judge did not impose that. He said, I will allow you to withdraw it and take your chances at trial, or you can accept 50 instead. And he has told me it was my responsibility. It was my actions. I'm taking responsibility. I'll take the 50. I have to be punished. He didn't make any statements at the time. I don't know if that was his choice or advice of counsel, but I know that he would have loved, looking back, he certainly would have loved to show the remorse that he felt. And I certainly know feels today. Let me just have a moment, just to make sure I touched on everything that I wanted to. As one of the board members pointed out, I believe his max date is around 5 years from now. So this is, in all likelihood, at his age and his health, it appears to be. Is it 4? I'm sorry.
4.
It appears that he is someone that will obviously eventually be released. He does have support in the community. His sisters are established members of the community. And I do want to speak briefly to Attorney Walcott. I can certainly appreciate and understand her comments of somebody who did a terrible act in the community of Hartford. And there's no denying that. Richard won't deny that. And certainly choosing Hartford as his second option was in no way an affront to the community or intending to speak, hey, I'm back. He's been incarcerated for 30 years. He doesn't know anything else. He doesn't have connections anywhere else. So that was somewhere he could envision having the most success. But certainly Waterbury was his top choice. He could have options for employment. And he has the intelligence. He has the the drive to better himself, the intelligence to continue to seek help, and to keep himself busy, keep himself engaged, which I think he recognizes as another of not an avoidance to keep yourself busy and working, but if he keeps his mind active, that is where he is at his healthiest. So I appreciate the board's time, and I appreciate everyone's comments and questions. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you, Attorney Williams. So at this time, the board members will enter into deliberation to discuss your case. Everyone, of course, can listen to our deliberation. And we'll come back to Mr. Torres with our decision. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank the attorneys and social worker and Mr. Torres for being here and presenting their case to us. You know, when I look at this case, you know, if I look back at the PSI, there's a period of time between October of 1993 and August of 1994 that Mr. Torres was on a rampage when it comes to criminal types of things. You know, and you know, I believe the regret and the remorse Mr. Torres has shown today is something that's real. If I look at the tools that we use, rating, he rates out low. Both of those, his, you know, his tickets are interesting in that there's 27 of them. 7 of them have been 7 of them have been since 2020, and all but one of those has been related to substance use or possession. All of which stopped after it took tier 2 in 2023. So there hasn't been any further contraband or refusal to take to give it render a specimen. Neither one of those has been there. Although there's some damage to property in those tickets, there is no violence to people in those tickets. He's had several programs. The interesting piece of that, though, is that most of those programs were from 1996 to 2013. And early on, and it was referenced by the defense attorney, by the public defender, by the programs that he took early on were related to violence. And I don't know, I believe that you tie his conduct inside to the programs that he had taken very, very early on. And we hardly ever see that there's programs taken that early in a sentence that's a 50-year sentence. Right at the beginning of incarceration, it's usually way later. He did take in the last 4 years, he's taken voices, and he's taken tier 2, and he rated in tier 2 he rated as excellent. He, in discussion about a recovery and release plan with him, he has a job offer. You know, I think that what he said about counseling in what the state's attorney said, I think what Mr. Torres is alluding to is that it's hard to just get counseling when you have a substance use score of a 2 and a mental health score of a 2 on the inside, but he's committed to doing counseling on the outside. And the two people who Mr. Torres looks up to, his sisters, are both engaged in counseling. So that's something that Mr. Torres wants to pursue as well. He notes that he wants to engage in positive activities, AA and NA, and has some knowledge and is interested in looking at a recovery coach because he'll need the support community. And that's really where the humility statement came from. It's like, you know, oftentimes an offender will leave prison like, I got this. I got this, you know, and in order to get to that place, it's you got to be coming from a place of humility to know. He knows that he has to cooperate with his parole officer, and he wants to. His comments about AA and people that he wants to be there with. He wants to put people in his life who are positive and want to change. He's had several letters of support. You know, there's a lot of positive things here, right? But what we're dealing with is a murder and an attempt to commit robbery first that involved, to my reading and my where I am, it involves substance.
Mhm.
And what we're talking about is it's been a period of 2 years since. There's 4 years or so between now and the sentence for Mr. Torres or his release to the community. I mean, I want to hear what you both have to say, but where I am is that I think that an additional couple of years of Mr. Torres showing us that he can remain committed to recovery and maybe, you know, establish some kind of relationship with recovery coach, engage in some kind of recovery based or positive programming there, you know, and really seek out and put together, you know, he has a lot of good plans, but some more work towards his successful release. I think as of recent, he's done a really good job with what he's doing. I just have those concerns just related to the instant offense.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. And I would agree with much of what you said. I will correct for the record. I have him scoring as moderate in one of his assessments. Yeah, you said low, so just for clarification. Anyhow, I would agree that I do see some growth and change throughout the years. And I hope that Mr. Torres has taken some constructive criticism here today from us, and will take our advice. I think we're all on the same page that there's still some work to be done here. The tickets are very serious, and while it has been a little time, 2 years would not be enough for me to feel comfortable given the nature, it's very serious nature of the offense that did involve drugs. So, you know, I like your idea of asking him to do a little more work and revisiting this in 2 years, because he'll still have 2 years left at that point, where he could benefit from the support of parole, given that there's no supervision to follow this sentence. Ms. Chance?
So I agree with what both of you have said, and I do have him rated moderate. So I think for me, it just goes back to Mr. Torres's maturity, and I can see a lot of growth there. But in terms of his decision making, there's room for improvement. And, you know, just referencing the fact that he had a cell phone because he wanted to, you know, keep in touch with his mother when he knew it was wrong and not appropriate. The fact that he does suffer from stress but not willing to seek the inside counseling because he thinks he would have more support when he does that with his sister. Also, very concerning are the DRs and not willing to pursue even the NA meeting and seeing it as negative. And in majority of cases that I know, if an offender or someone like Mr. Torres doesn't attend the programs or meetings, they think of other ways that they can do something to continue with their sobriety. And so I do think he needs some more time in, and he needs to improve his ability to stay clean and follow rules.
Okay, thank you. In the matter of Richard Torres, inmate number 226205, I'll make a motion to deny parole at this time and rehear the case in February of 2027. Reasons for denial: the nature and circumstance of your offenses, your poor institutional adjustment, the disciplinary reports, and inadequate evidence of offender change. Is there anything further?
Second.
Is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Mr. Torres, do you understand? We want to give you another opportunity to come back before us, but we want you to do a little more work. So participate in programming, continue to work, maybe find some meetings or supportive groups there in the facility. Certainly refrain from any further disciplinary reports. And really think about the things that we've talked about here today. I hope it'll be helpful for you and not all negative. Okay, we wish you the best. Thank you to everyone for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the Public Act 2369 hearing for Richard Torres, inmate number 226205, and it is 10:33 a.m.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess before we start the next case. Thank you.
So I'm gonna have you go back because I have to. Was the lady that just left? That went in with Torres?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just put them in here. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what's funny. You are right.
Yeah.
Have you on the one chair there? We're gonna start in about 5 minutes, okay?
Thank you.
Officer Williams?
We're being recorded, so obviously I'm talking about it.
Attorney Mortimer, could you ask the officer to come in for a moment? Officer Williams, we just need you to unmute. I muted during the recess.
Can you hear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Good morning. My name is Parole Officer Wangersman. Today's Thursday, February 20th, 2025. This is the Public Act 23-169 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. For the record, Mr. Martinez, the state of Connecticut passed and made effective October 1st, 2023, the Public Act 23-169. It's an act concerning parole eligibility for an individual serving a lengthy sentence for a crime committed before the individual reached the age of 21 and criminal history records erasure. You fall under this act, and this means that you are under the age of 21, that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults, the hallmark features of youth, and any subsequent growth and maturity you've displayed while we're reviewing you for suitability today. Following board members are present this morning and by stating their names on the record, certify they have reviewed all statutorily required documents in preparation of this hearing.
Good morning, Mr. Martinez. I'm Jennifer Zaccanini.
Good morning, Mike Pohl.
Good morning,
Morning.
Joy Chance.
Morning.
Also in attendance this morning, we have Attorney James Mortimer. Attorney Mortimer, if you can please state your name, juris number, and business address for the record.
Of course, good morning. James Mortimer, my juris number is 434106. Address is 400 Post Road, Suite 4, Fairfield, Connecticut 06824.
Thank you very much. Also present this morning, we have State's Attorney Joy Gary. Attorney Gary, if you can also please do the same, state your name, juris number, and business address for the record.
Yes, good morning, members of the board. Assistant State's Attorney Joy Gary. Juris number is 439493. Business address is Waterbury State's Attorney's Office, 400 Grand Street, Waterbury 06702.
Thank you very much. We do not have input from the Office of Victim Services today. Mr. Martinez, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Was Martinez 228655.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14 Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Martinez, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. Martinez, do you have any questions?
No.
And are you ready to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So as previously indicated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Luis Martinez, inmate number 228655. Mr. Martinez is serving a sentence of 6 years flat with no probation to follow for murder and an attempted robbery in the first degree, along with weapon in institution. There is no victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows he has completed programming such as alternatives to violence, good intentions, bad choices, tier 2, thresholds, voices, and anger management. He reportedly participated in the Lifers group in Prison of Peace, and he currently maintains a job assignment. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the low range risk for recidivism. Mr. Martinez, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to thank the Board of Pardons and Paroles for allowing me to speak here today. It is with great humility that I stand before you, grateful for the opportunity to acknowledge my past misdeeds and ask forgiveness. On September 12, 1994, I committed a robbery that led to the death of another man. Myself along with another individual walked up to Mr. Filipe, and as I pointed the gun towards him, I demanded that he gave me everything. When he failed to comply, I fired the pistol once and misfired. I fired twice for more, striking him, then we ran away from the scene. I would like to express that I take full responsibility for my actions and crime I committed. I am truly sorry for the impact my actions had on Mr. Filipe's family, my family, and the community. I never want to minimize the pain I brought to this family. I'm also aware that my actions may never be undone. And whether or not they forgive me is out of my control. I can, however, control what I choose to do with my life. Remorse is defined as having profound sorrow for any pain and suffering, hurt or destruction one has inflicted upon the woven fabric of humanity. And it is reflected on the man I chose to become, a man that continuously worked to be a better person. I would like everyone to know that my words are not just excuse or justification for my behavior. I've taken accountability for who I was and for the adult that I've become. For the past 30 plus years, I've woken up each day knowing that because of me, families were destroyed. It truly saddens me to know that because of my impulsive and immature behavior, an innocent man lost his life. At times I played over in my mind, how could I have been a part of something that caused other human beings so much pain? I committed the most horrific decision, which I'm so deeply regretful and remorseful for, and will forever regret it. I would like nothing more than to be able to go back and take away all the suffering and emotional burden that I caused through the senseless act of ignorance. Only God, my Lord and Savior, knows what truly is in my heart, and it is because of my faith that I can ask this family for forgiveness and understanding, not only for the child I once was, but also for the man that stands before you today. I just hope someday they can find it in their hearts to forgive me, although I know there's nothing I can say that will help them understand how sorry I truly feel. I would like to give a brief history and some facts that correlate to the reasons and time that I was incarcerated, what I've learned and experienced, as well as my growth changes throughout these past 30 years. Let me begin by saying that I was incarcerated 2.5 months past my 18th birthday and sentenced to 60 years at the age of 20. In my short time on this earth prior to my incarceration, I endured many hardships. I was born in Puerto Rico and was raised between Puerto Rico and New York. At a very young age, I experienced many forms of violence and abuse, beginning at home with a drunk father who abused my 4 siblings, my mother, as well as myself, both verbally and physically. It is true I say that alcoholism is a family disease because if one member uses, the entire family suffers. I could see it in my mother's eyes. She went from a woman who smiled a lot to losing love for life. I don't know if it was me being traumatized or not truly understanding the severity of all the abuse. I still look up to my father, love him to the day he lost his battle with alcohol and passed away. Not long after that, it seemed like my oldest brother began the same pattern of abuse toward my mother. I remember one time he raised his hand to hit her. The very next day, in the middle of the night, my mother packed up whatever she could, got us on the plane, and moved back to Puerto Rico, leaving everything behind. We went to live with my maternal grandmother, who was my entire world. But less than a year later, she had a heart attack and passed away as well. Now, it was difficult enough relocating, leaving everything, everyone you know behind, but losing 2 most influential people in your life within a year took a toll on me. Being forced to grow up without anyone to turn to for guidance was terrifying. Growing up in Puerto Rico was very difficult for me. My mother struggled as a single mother to put food on the table, to the point that sometimes we go to bed hungry. Trying to help my mother, I began selling drugs. I was pressured into situations no child should have to deal with. I was always bullied and would have to fight for my life and forced to survive in very violent surroundings. All I saw was gun violence and drug use to the point that it became a part of me and I became numb to the world. I was the true product of my environment. So overwhelming and fear for my life because it changes my behavior. My mother sent me back to New York to live with my sister. But by then I was in such a dark place that I felt no sense of worth. Not knowing how to deal with my behavior. My sister kicked me out as well. Now at the age of 16, I was homeless. I once again began to sell drugs to take care of myself. I knew nothing else. It was then that I decided to move to Connecticut to live with family in an attempt to get away from drugs and violence. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape myself. By the age of 17, I had survived being shot and stabbed on several occasions. To a regular person, this would have been a wake-up call. But instead, I dodged more into the street life. I felt alone and didn't care about anyone or anything. Then came the news I was going to be a father, which normally it would be joyful news, and it was, but joy wasn't something I was used to. How could I be a father when I was a child myself? At an age where most kids worry about getting good grades and graduating, I was going to be responsible for someone else's life. The thought of it stressed me out even more. I began to spiral out of control. I began to drink more and do more drugs as a way to escape my own reality. I was in such a deep hole, and as much as I tried, I could not dig myself out. Once again, I was lost until I ended up in jail. Before becoming incarcerated, being confined to violent conditions, I had succumbed to a culture of dysfunctionality. I had no idea that my actions was impinging on the safety and security of society. Once incarcerated, I was forced to grow up fast. I never thought that it would take for me to come to prison to become a man. My first days in prison were traumatizing. When I first came in, I was easily peer pressured because I was young and naive. The street program and mental condition that shaped my self-concept resulted in impulsive behavior, which we placed upon my DR history. I would react to situations because I worried about what people would think of me. I remember having conversations with my mother, where she would talk to me, about the power of prayer and stressed the importance of becoming a good person, a good man. I made a promise to my mother to do positive things with my time so that I can mature and evolve as a human being. To this day, I can look into her eyes and be proud of the fact that I've always kept that promise. My mother has never abandoned me and has been with me from day one. Her along with my family are the driving force behind the man that I've become. Now that I'm older and mature, I reflect on events like when I would fight someone over the most meaningless things, I will rationalize by saying it was the principle. However, it was due to a false sense of pride and fear of being able to soften what could happen to me. In hindsight, I realized that many of my actions were guided by my lack of identity. I didn't know who I was and didn't know who I wanted to be. Now, when I'm faced with situations, I'm able to rely on what I've learned in programs, self-study, and learned experience. I'm able to think not only about how it would affect me, but my family as well. In prison, I served many men like Jeffrey Perry, Ray Boyd, amongst others, doing positive things for their lives regardless of the circumstances. And when your concept of life is distorted as mine was, you tend to make decisions that are counterproductive. Watching these men with no certain future implement what they learned in these programs for their everyday lives was inspiring, and it motivated me to make a change of minds. I saw these men change their lives for the sake of being better people. Some of these very men mentored me when I was younger and helped guide me in the right direction. This allowed me to recognize internal conditions such as morals, virtues, ethics, and civility that were uncultivated and needed development within myself. On my way to change, I began to build a relationship with God, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I started reading the Bible and learning about esteeming others higher than you would yourself and laying down your life for the good of others. These concepts were foreign to me. However, the more I read and meditated on the word, the more I changed and grew. My thought process changed. I wanted more and more to be a better man. I began to roll in programs because I felt lost. I also sought out mental health counselors for guidance, and with their help along with what I've learned in these programs, I managed to regain balance and transform my life. Since then, I've taken advantage of every opportunity afforded to me. I completed anger management twice, thresholds twice, AVP, voices tier 2, good intentions, bad choices, prison MPs, Kairos 3 and 4, the Lifers program. I've done commercial cleaning 1 and 2, and I received my high school diploma. I completed a college level correspondence course with high honors in drug and alcohol counseling with the Stratford Career Institute, as well as 2 correspondence courses from college guild and captivities and health. Throughout the years, I maintained different jobs as tinman, main laundry, hallway maintenance, as well as barber jobs, which Curry have been doing for the past 3 years. While at Ghana, I was a part of the Lifers program. I spoke and mentored high school kids when they came to visit. Also, while at Cheshire, I served as a mentor in the chronic discipline unit, helping them through their transition not only into general population, but most importantly, back in society as well. I was also assigned as a peer mentor in the anger management program at Cheshire. Here at Osborn, volunteered to give haircuts to the hospice inmates at the hospital unit, as well as serving as the liaison between the barbershop and the barbering program, helping the students understand how to function in a real work environment. While I've taken various programs which have helped my development, these following programs have had a greater impact on me. Anger management has been a transformative experience. It taught me that nonviolence is not just the absence of physical harm. It has been instrumental in teaching me the importance of forgiveness, conflict resolution, and contribute to a sense of harmony within my community. Tier 2 helped me think more critically about the challenges I will face upon my release, set my realistic goals, and reinforce the idea that I must continue to work hard while keeping a positive attitude. Also, by maintaining various jobs, I have learned the value of hard work, professionalism, and attention to detail. I have gained practical skills that I can carry into the workforce and have developed a strong work ethic that I am proud of. I felt my transition began in 1998 when I committed myself to programs and my education. I changed how I spoke because I felt that if I didn't gain communication skills, I wouldn't be able to convey my message of growth. Having engaged years of mentoring along with learned experience, I felt I have acquired skill set that could best serve the outside community. I would like to be afforded the opportunity to help these young men and women before they reach this point. I want to be for them the person I needed so badly at that critical junction in my life when I was lost and out of control. There was a time at the age of 18 I was angry and lived life aimlessly. That person does not exist anymore, I assure you. I have found my inner peace and completely reformed my once-based nature. And now at the age of 48, I'm categorically morally prepared to re-enter society. I see it as an obligation to contribute to the positive growth of the younger generation. My intentions are to join a nonprofit that gears towards speaking to young men and women. I would like to share my story, what I've learned and experienced, and my evolution throughout my journey. I imagine myself coming right out of prison, helping to develop programs that are designed specifically towards the cultivation of wayward youth. I intend on working with the Bonello Foundation, which is a nonprofit out of Brooklyn, New York, that works for the underserved community. They've also partnered with SOI, which is the acronym for Saving Our Youth, out of Connecticut. So far, they've done 4 stop the violence events in Connecticut, which were closed by China Ways. I plan to take advantage of the strong support system in the form of friends and family, many who have extended job offers as well as financial moral support. My mother, daughter, sisters, brothers, nieces, and nephews, all who have supported me through my incarceration. My sister, Elizabeth Rodriguez, who is one of my biggest supporters, has shown so much confidence in me and has given me the opportunity to help her run a small business that is owned by both her and her husband. She would also set up a place of my own to stay upon my release from the halfway house. I will also be able to continue my education as well as getting my barber's license. I've also been in contact with Holly Wasilewski. Together we have formulated a re-entry plan that best fits my specific needs. Ms. Wasilewski has sent me a packet with names and numbers of employers that will pay for me for training and potential employment. She also sent me names of different barber schools that I could attend, as well as info on how to retain insurance and medical plans for people who were formerly incarcerated. Also, a book to study for my driver's permit and numbers of places that will help me pay for my license as well as my vocational training, amongst other things. But most importantly, I will be able to get counseling and attend meetings once I'm released. I firsthand know how difficult it is not having that someone you can speak to and help you with cope with specific issues. Recently, I lost a nephew to drug overdose. That stemmed from depression and having no one to speak to about his problems. So personally, I know that after 30 years of incarceration, it will be very important to me having that someone to talk to, but help me have a successful reentry into society. I stand here before you today asking for the opportunity to show society through my actions each and every day the man that I've become. And in doing so, I would make an amends to all that I've done wrong, as well as giving positive things to the community from which I've taken so much from. In closing, I would like to reiterate by once again apologizing to Mr. DeFilippi's family for causing them so much hardship. I just wish that somehow back then I could have the wherewithal and the maturity level to truly understand how much pain my actions would cause so many people. I just pray that they are no longer suffering and have found some healing. Once more, I would like to show my appreciation to the board for this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Martinez, thank you for your statement. You're a fast talker, and I'm a fast talker, so I know what it's like to be a fast talker, but you're a fast reader too.
Thank you.
Sometimes I have to be very conscious and slow myself down so that people can understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
Anyhow, we thank you for your remarks and your presence here today. We have reviewed this panel in preparation for today's hearing. Your entire file, which includes your police report, the court transcript, PSI, your entire institutional record with the Department of Correction, which includes letters of support from DOC staff, a stack of them, which we rarely see. In addition, evaluations, certificates, your educational accomplishments, in addition to the disciplinary reports. We have correspondence from Attorney Mortimer, a report from Dr. Lopez. So we're very well versed in your case, is my point in telling you all of this. We do have some additional questions. When we're done with our questions, the officer did verify there's no input from the Office of Victim Services today. So we'll turn the hearing over to the State's Attorney's Office, and your attorney will have an opportunity to speak. Okay?
Thank you.
So I want to touch on your offenses. We're not here to retry the case, of course. Happy to hear that you express your remorse here today. You were 18 years old at the time you committed the murder?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 18 years old. We read about your upbringing, the lifestyle that you were living. You know, you weren't working. You were admittedly selling drugs and robbing people for money at that time. Horrible tragedy. This offense, it really is senseless. And some of these cases are really hard to read, and all because he wouldn't give you, I don't even know what you were looking for. Clearly there were bigger issues here, right? Because if you really needed money, you would have gotten it somewhere else and didn't have to shoot and kill this this victim. But your troubles didn't stop with this murder, right? Because you come into prison, you pick up a new sentence for assault on personnel, and then weapon in a corrections institute. So it's been a journey
Yes,
for
ma'am.
you and for
Yes,
all
ma'am.
of the victims that you've created along the way. Certainly been a journey. Do you want to tell us about the 95 assault on personnel case?
But me, that was I just didn't. I had a hard time when I first was incarcerated with authority, and I know I had to deal with the environment. I was so young, and it was just me not thinking more than anything. Me just reacting and being afraid of where I was and feeling that I had to live up to a certain standard. And it was just the whole transition was difficult for me. I was going through a lot at the time, and I just didn't know how to deal with things, basically.
So what happened in the actual offense?
I was the correction officer approached me and went to grab me and I removed it, I pushed his hand away. That was
Okay.
it. I pushed his hand away.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, pushing a CO is never a good idea.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and then the following year, you had weapon and institution was a shank, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did everyone have a shank at that time?
Did everyone?
Yeah. Was that a common occurrence?
Yes, it was. Back then it was.
Yeah.
But when that happened, it was more me not being aware of my surroundings. It just, I'm responsible. They tell you responsible for everything that goes on in your cell, everything. And you have to check yourself. Unfortunately, I didn't do a thorough job, but I take full responsibility for that. It was me. I should have done that because had I done my job, I wouldn't have been dealing with that.
Right. Okay. So you've had 17 disciplinary reports. I did note that 13 of them happened in your first 4 or 5 years of incarceration. So very early on, we see that oftentimes when people come in young, they have such a hard time adjusting that the first few years are really tough. So since then, there were 4 additional ones after those first few years, last one being 8 years ago. So at what point did you turn the corner and decide I have to stop getting in trouble?
I think for the most part was in 1998. I started joining certain programs. I learned a lot from Life's program. I learned about camaraderie, and the older inmates, they would take me under their wing and they mentored me. And they taught me how to do things better, different things. Like they taught me that I'm not only doing this for myself, I'm doing this for my family. So it's other things you have to think about. You just can't worry about what you're doing because it affects so many other people. It's like, when things you do affect other people, and they brought it to my attention and they showed me how to conduct myself in this environment. They showed me how to do things the right way, how to think about family, and how to put important things first before myself. So a lot of times the older inmates mentored me. So that program was very detrimental to my upbringing, basically, because I grew up in prison. So yes, programs and doing what I've learned in these programs, actually putting them to effect in my daily life, that's helped me a lot.
Okay. Were there specific mentors that impacted you?
Yes, I had Jeffrey Perry, I had Ray Boyd, there was so many different ones that at one point in time, like back then, a lot of these brothers, they went home, they're home now. So
Right.
they taught me basically how to be a better person, not just in prison, but how to conduct myself in general. And that's what I try to do now when I try to mentor the younger inmates. I try to teach them how to conduct themselves, not just for here, but when they go back into society, when they deal with their families, when they deal with their kids. So it's we all helped each other.
Mhm.
But they taught me a lot. They taught me a lot.
Yeah. And we know those guys, right? Because we've seen them. They've gone home under
Okay.
similar circumstances
Yes,
with the
ma'am.
change in statute.
Yes.
But back then, nobody knew, right? Nobody
No.
knew that these statutes would or these public acts would pass and you'd have an opportunity at parole. So these changes came with no knowledge that, you know, there was no incentive at that time. So happy to hear that. You've taken some good programs here. Which program do you think helped you the most?
Anger management. Anger management. When I was younger.
You definitely had an anger problem.
Yes, I did. I did. And when I was younger, like I said, I doing things for myself and growing up the way I did, you don't know who you could trust and you don't know who you are. Once you start learning who you are as a person, as an individual, anger management taught me how to, not only how to deal with my anger, but how to let go of my anger. It also taught me that it's all right to be angry, but how you channel that anger, that's how you're going to be able to address certain situations. So I've learned that, and meditation, learning how to deal with individuals, how to diffuse situations. Anger management helped me out a lot throughout my incarceration.
Okay. Have you thought about, I mean, outside of the obvious, you impacted a lot of people because of this violent offense and the loss of life, but outside of that, your behavior, when I read the official documents, and at one point there was reference to you laughing and joking after the offense and, maybe in court not being respectful or appropriately remorseful. Have you thought about how those actions and behaviors would affect people after such tragic offenses?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a nervous individual, and that's like one of my. I don't mean no disrespect by it. It's just something that I have with me since I was young. It's like I get nervous and I laugh, but that's no disrespect to nobody. But I do understand how can it affect and how can it be offensive to other people. I do, and so I try to make a conscious effort to not do that because I understand how other people will not be able to understand. So I'm not here to offend anybody. And I don't want to, what I'm saying? I don't want to be that person. So I make conscious efforts not to do that. But yes, I do understand how it can offend other people.
Yeah. You've been working throughout, right? I read about different positions that you've held. You were a mentor in the chronic discipline unit.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's great that you could go and give back when you were such a problem in the facility for a while. What years did you do that?
It was like I was granted opportunity, I think in 2020, from 21 to like 24, to like 23, 24, around there.
In Cheshire?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And you were a barber in the hospice unit?
No, I'm a barber. I'm the barber here in Osborn, but I go volunteer and cut the hospice MHS.
How long have you been a barber now?
This thing, it has been 3 years.
You've been a barber for 3 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And you do that 7 days a week?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Okay. What are your work hours?
We work from 8 o'clock to like 11 o'clock. Then we come back for like an hour, and then we go back for like 3 more hours to like 2:30.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I did see that you're getting 12 days a month of statutory good time and 4 days, 4 or 5, whatever, for job credit, right?
Yes,
You're getting a lot of time off, but you're doing the work. And you gained a certificate for drug and alcohol treatment specialist?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so tell us about how drugs affected you early on in your life.
I mean, drugs, I started doing drugs because it was like the thing to do. I was peer pressured to doing drugs, and then it became a sedative sort of. I mean, I started doing drugs to basically just numb the pain. Everything I didn't know how to deal with things, and drugs helped me cope with certain situations. I mean, obviously, it led me to commit some terrible, decisions, but that's what I used to do drugs for, to basically just help me numb the pain.
Okay. So I read, and I don't know how accurate this is because sometimes we have conflicting reports. I read that you used alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, LSD, all those things all right?
Yes, ma'am.
When's the last time you used?
Before I got incarcerated.
You haven't used it all throughout this incarceration?
I could gladly say I never felt the urge, and I never felt the need to do it. But when I first got incarcerated, I made a point of emphasis to reach out to mental health counselors because I needed someone to talk to. I didn't know how to deal with this. And when I did, they taught me a lot. Then when I met certain inmates that took me under their wing and mentored me, they showed me how to do positive things and conduct myself in a certain way, which is why I stopped receiving DRs early on in my incarceration. I never had a dirty urine, never had no drug charges, none of that. So that's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, it's great. And we know that the drugs are available if you want to use them there. So that's great that you fought that temptation. You've been educating yourself. Talk to us about, are you in school now?
No. I take courses from college gear. I've been taking courses. Right now I'm doing a families course. I did a captivities course. I did a health course, and now I'm doing a families course, as well as other things. I tried to sign up in Cheshire, but because the line of to sign up, it's only 30, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 30 seats. So it's hard to sign up for that. So it's a long list. So I try to do things for myself and try to educate myself, keep myself busy.
Yeah. So do you have any college credits?
No, but I became a drug and alcohol counselor.
So they were all like, yeah, we have the copies of the certifications that you've received. Okay. What about, do you have any plans to do more schooling or no?
Yes, ma'am. If I'm released, I would like to retain my barber's license, obviously, because that's something I've always wanted to do. Sometime, maybe own my barbershop one day. But I would like to go back because I'm interested in the mental aspect of things and the drug and alcohol thing. So I would like to become a counselor out there and be able to bring that forth. So once I'm able to work with a nonprofit, I'll be able to bring that to the fold. So yes, I'm very interested in continuing my education.
Nice. Okay. You received excellent evaluations from the programs, from your work supervisors. We did get a lot of letters of support. I mentioned the correctional staff, but also from your sister, from Ray, from fellow inmates, family members on the outside. You have a lot of support, and I understand that you're going to go work in your sister's store if you're released.
Yes, ma'am. That's the immediate plan, so I can have some form of monetary form to support myself. But yes, once I'm released, I'm working there. I plan on doing other things, looking for other forms of employment. Yes, I do.
Understood. Yeah, and while you have the family support, you're asking for a halfway house to help with your transition.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. You were married and divorced during this incarceration. What happened?
Unfortunately, things don't work out. I can't do this by myself. So I was grateful for the time that she gave me, and this is not something that I could put on someone else. And I have to respect people's decisions. It doesn't mean I don't love that person. This means that we wasn't compatible in this form. So she was able to stick around, and I respect her for that. I still care for her, and we still good friends. So it's not.
Yeah. No, definitely. That would be difficult, I would imagine. What's your relationship like now with your daughter?
It's great. I speak to my daughter all the time. I talk to my grandkids. My daughter comes visit. So we have a great relationship.
Nice. Okay. Now, you mentioned giving back in the community. Any immediate plans? What programs? I
understand that. Well, I'm planning on working with the Vanilla Foundation out of New York. And like I said, they partner with SOI, which is the acronym for Save Our Youth in Connecticut. And they do...
Hey, slow down. One more time. What does it stand for?
Saving Our Youth.
Saving Our Youth. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Out of Connecticut. So I plan on being part of that organization. Whatever they ask of me, I'm going to do. But I plan on taking care of myself. But I understand that I have to do things for myself as well. I have to get myself straight before I'm able to help anyone else. So I plan on doing what I have to do, then I'm able to give back. But yes, that's definitely something I want to do. I'm going to do.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a good reentry plan. What do you see as your challenges?
I understand that. And for simplicity, and I say this a lot, for simplicity, and I use this when I'm mentoring the kids. People, places, and things. And they teach you that in a lot of programs. People you associate yourself with will define the places you go and the things that you do. So I have to be very careful as to who I associate myself with and where I go and things that I do, because I understand that those could be triggers. So me knowing this, I'm gonna stay away from all of that. I have to stay away from all of that in order for me to be successful. So because I identified that earlier on, I'm able to do what I have to do to be successful. And I intend to.
Okay. Thank you for speaking with me. I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues now. Ms. Chance.
So, Mr. Martinez, I don't really have much after Madam Chair asked all those questions. But I wanted to ask you, you were denied commutation in 2022 and the sentence modification in 2023. But even after your denial of commutation, you still continued on your path. How did you feel when it was denied, and what motivated you to continue doing what you were doing?
Well, yes, absolutely. I felt somewhat dejected, but I didn't let that deter me from my path. I knew I was doing this way before I even knew I had a parole day. So I just continued doing positive things and doing what I had to do to make myself better. It motivated me to do so.
Okay. And I heard you, when Madam Chair asked you about challenges, and, everybody always talked about people, places, and things.
Yes.
But, and for people, you say who you're going to be around. So can you give an example of people who would pose a challenge for you and how you would handle it?
Well, I've been away for so long. So my so-called friends that I had back then, so I don't have that to worry about. I would say it's more of a me focusing on family, my community, upbringing. Now, my family, as opposed to back then, they're older, they're mature, they're established. They are strong, healthy beings, and so I can always rely on them. And as opposed to back then, I'm not afraid to ask for help. I understand that if I need help, I can go to them. So these are the people I'm surrounding myself with, because family is very important to me. My daughter, my grandkids, my mother, my brother, my sister. These are people that I surround myself with. So this is what I'm about now. I'm older now, I'm almost 50 years old. So I don't feel the need to be around other people that I feel is going to be detrimental to my behavior or my conduct in the street. I know I have to stay positive, so I'm going to just deal with them.
Okay. So how will you benefit from your release? Right now, what benefits would you get?
Well, obviously I'll be around my family, and that's something mentally that will help me very much. I'll be able to be a grandfather to my grandkids, a father to my daughter, which I never had the opportunity to do. So I'll be able to continue my education, which is big for me. I will be able to give back. And these are things that are very important to me. And I feel that after a while of doing this up in here, I've gained these skills where I'm able to give back, and I want to.
So, one more question. Do you think that during your, I think it's almost 31 years of your incarceration, that you have demonstrated remorse? And if so, how?
I feel that I have. I have a better understanding of everything that I've done. I have a great understanding of my crime. I know that what I did was senseless, and that's something that I deal with every day. I deal with every day because I make sure that this is always in my mind, because I know what I did was wrong, and I never take that for granted. Never. You can't. A man lost his life, and that was because of me. So I make sure that everything that I do is basically geared towards doing better, so that this won't happen again. So that the younger generation have a better understanding of what can happen and how quickly things can change. So yes, I feel that I've shown remorse. I feel that by my actions, I'm able to do and show every day how I feel and the remorse that or how I feel about my crime, let's just say that. Yes, I do.
So thinking back to how you were when you committed this offense, how have you matured since then?
Well, like I said earlier, I was 18. I was very impulsive. I didn't think, and that's something big with me. I didn't think. I just reacted a lot of times. And because, unfortunately, we don't like to admit to ourselves, but I was doing drugs and things that I did shouldn't have happened. But I changed. I'm almost 50 years old, and having a strong relationship with my family, having a strong relationship with the community in here, because we do have a community, and able to teach these kids and able to talk to them, I benefited from that as well. So I changed tremendously throughout the years.
Thank you. You've certainly responded in the way that I hope that you would. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chance.
Okay.
Mr. Paul. Okay, all right, so as stated earlier, we have no input from the Office of Victim Services. Thank you, Officer Wingerton.
Yes, so at this time, we're going to turn it over to each of the attorneys. Will be afforded an opportunity to make a statement. We can start with State's Attorney Gary. If you have any comments or remarks you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Yes, very brief. Thank you. Good morning, members of the board. Given the serious nature of these convictions and the impact of these crimes on the victim's family and the community, the state opposes the early release of Mr. Martinez. We understand Mr. Martinez has been working to better himself and others while incarcerated, and that these crimes occurred when Mr. Martinez was under the age of 21. However, these crimes were extremely serious and violent. Mr. Martinez was convicted by a jury after trial, and the current sentence reflects the seriousness of these crimes. Although there is no input from the victim's family today, we must acknowledge that the victim lost his life and the victim's family lost a loved one due to the actions of Mr. Martinez. With that being said, there's nothing further from the state. Thank you, members of the board, for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Gary.
Thank you very much. Attorney Mortimer, if you have any final remarks you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members of the board, Chairperson Zach Ignan. It's nice to see you all again this morning. My name is James Mortimer. I have the privilege of serving as assigned counsel for Mr. Martinez here. For the Filippi family, I obviously know that nobody's present here today, but in the event that this is ever seen, no, I certainly want to express my own remorse for their loss, as well as the kind of senseless and tragic nature of what occurred, 31 years ago. It's unfortunate, that all individuals often have to relive kind of the concept, the tragedies that they lived many years earlier in these kinds of proceedings. But it's not lightly that these matters should be approached. So Mr. Martinez obviously has been incarcerated for over 30 years. He entered prison very much a part of the problem. He's today nearly 50 years old, as he mentioned a number of times, a grandfather, and he's been consistently over the years a role model for others. And by way of background, I myself have known Mr. Martinez for about 5.5 years. I first came into to know Mr. Martinez through a petition for writ of habeas corpus he had filed in the wake of Miller and Graham, essentially asking for what he is receiving today, that his youth and impulsivity be considered in conjunction with the crime that he committed. And over these years, I certainly got to know Lewis as well as members of his family, learning that we shared a few friends like Mr. Perry, individuals that have now obviously returned to the community and are positively giving back to those communities. I certainly submit that Mr. Martinez demonstrated that he would be of like mind and also of value to the community that he's going to be discharging to, whether it be today or some years down the line. But unlike many individuals that I've met through the course of my work, Mr. Martinez is someone that's been consistently remorseful and acceptance of the responsibility for the actions he took as an 18-year-old. I mean, and even in the years after, during his early years after sentencing, he's demonstrated a degree of acceptance and maturity that I often don't see professionally. Now, Dr. Lopez obviously prepared a very thorough evaluation that we submitted along with a mitigation report that Clint Roberts had prepared. But I just want to briefly address some of the points that I think are important, and that's in reviewing Mr. Martinez's early life. It's, for me, not surprising that he ended up forfeiting the vast majority of his better years to prison. And he bore witness to kind of violence and destruction, hopelessness that really no child should. He found escapes in the worst ways. He lived the life that he was taught by the people that he looked up to. It's tragic. Now, certainly Mr. Martinez's early life, his early adolescence, childhood, it's not an excuse for his crimes, but I believe it's important to see from where we stand today how far Mr. Martinez has come as a person and as just an individual. His childhood's been extensively documented. I'm not going to go into wade through those details again, but I was just in fact talking to Mr. Martinez the other day, kind of about the situations where parents are exposing their young children to alcohol, feeding them booze, in the same kind of chaotic background where the abuse is persisting. And as Mr. Martinez indicated, I think that alcoholism has kind of a unique manner of kind of perpetuating itself across generations. And I think Mr. Martinez, having lived that, has found value in growing from that. And I think that is probably going to be fairly influential in his own decisions in terms of, his interest in pursuing in the community substance abuse and alcohol abuse counseling. I think it's palpable given his history why that interest arose. But ultimately, by the time Mr. Martinez was 16, when oftentimes parents are teaching their kids how to drive, how to prepare for the PSATs, if those even still exist. But Lewis was a dropout. He was homeless. He was fending for himself, no one to look up to. And I think it's unsurprising that given that kind of background that he fended for himself in the manner that, people around him taught him to, drugs and drinking. If there was one surprising thing I encountered about Lewis, it was the degree of resilience that he's exhibited over the years. And I've been doing this for some time, and I've had the privilege of standing next to a number of individuals before this board that, I think that maybe aptly saying, there's a saying that, if you sit in a barber chair for long enough, you're going to get a haircut. And I think a lot of people that I stood with before this board have evidence that you grow up in these kinds of circumstances, you grow up in a structured kind of environment, you learn to take advantage of what's available to around you and to become a more functioning member of society. But, in my experience, that typically hasn't been in the mid to late 20s for a lot of individuals, especially those growing up in kinds of traumatic or substance abuse involved backgrounds. For Lewis, though, he says 98, but I think the record's more evidence at 97. He started to put it together in his very early 20s in terms of the life that he wanted to live and the person that he wanted to become. And that is impressive. When we get to the why, as Lewis had indicated, individuals like Mr. Perry, Mr. Smalls, Mr. Boyd, were very influential to Lewis. And now today he's serving that same function for younger people. And that's something that he's going to carry with him to the outside. Now, that change didn't happen overnight for Lewis. He engaged in education, jobs, positive programming, all the things that he could get in. Anger management and thresholds twice over the course of the years. He's put a lot of work into this. But I suspect Mr. Martinez's outlook has been why he's been so effective. Not just the work that he's done, but also his outlook, his positivity in terms of his effectiveness as a mentor in here and why he will continue to be effective on the outside. So when we look at letters from staff, letters from inmates, letters from family and friends in the community, Lewis has unequivocally demonstrated that he's a man that sets an example for others. He's a man that lives up to his own words. Some of the support letters from staff, staff that have known him far longer than I have, for decades, they all tell us that Lewis is someone that's ready for a second chance. And some of them tell us some anecdotal stories about Lewis, how when he was, I think it was Lieutenant Colombo had indicated that while Lewis was in Cheshire, he took the initiative and probably saved a woman's life on the outside. I mean, it takes a lot, as I'm sure the board knows, for inmate to talk about people to staff, but Lewis has developed those kinds of relationships over the course of the years with staff. He's earned their respect. Now, other inmates tell us what it is like to live with Lewis over the course of the years. He's someone that is coming to adulthood with a number of these individuals. And there's similar accounts of the mentorship, initiative, and compassion Lewis has demonstrated over the years. Dr. Lopez obviously concludes that Lewis is a low risk to the community. I think that's apparent given his growth, the individual that he's grown into become. And that's also consistent with Mr. Martinez's scores evaluation. But I have no doubt that Lewis is going to succeed on the outside of these walls and that he can do it on his own. But unlike a lot of individuals, Lewis is fortunate in a lot of respects because he has a very supportive family, a very supportive community. And he has outreach programs available to him, both within the networks that he's kind of cultivated over the years, but also through his interactions with individuals like Holly, his own family members that have engaged in this community. But, you know, Lewis has been lucky in some regards to the support he's going to discharge to. But I think given the circumstances where we presently are in terms of Mr. Martinez serving a flat sentence, with no supervision, I would submit that Lewis would greatly benefit from parole. Not only the structured aspect of it in terms after 30 years of incarceration, but also as having an officer as a resource out in the community. Now, based on the information before this board, we would respectfully submit that Lewis will live and remain at liberty without violating the law, that the benefits of Mr. Martinez returning to society would be greater than any benefits served by his continued incarceration, and that he has demonstrated substantial, amazing, really, rehabilitation since the time he was 18 years old. He has a family to go home to, a home to ultimately go home to. He knows how to ask for help, which I think differentiates Lewis from a lot of individuals, and I have no doubt Lewis is going to succeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mortimer. So at this time, Mr. Martinez, we're going to enter into deliberation to discuss your case, and we'll come back to you with our decision. Officer Wangersman, can I just want to verify with you. I thought one of his new sentences had probation to follow. Is it probation or conditional discharge?
It's condition.
Okay.
Assault on DOC, yeah.
Okay.
I'll pull up.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so these cases are never easy, right? Because they're all very serious offenses. We have felony murder here with attempted robbery first, and some other convictions added on after the fact. Mr. Martinez committed his offense at the age of 18. So over 30 years ago now, he's now a 48-year-old man. It's quite clear through the official documents that we have and his presentation here today that Mr. Martinez is not the same person that he was when he committed these crimes. Admittedly, he was very angry then, impulsive, and reckless. As a result, someone lost their life, which is tragic, awful. But Mr. Martinez took a turn early on in this incarceration. He has taken probably every program available with the Department of Correction. He has educated himself and then went on to become a mentor to those who were having similar problems that he had when he was younger. He's been working consistently throughout his incarcerations, and we see the growth and maturity when the disciplinary reports drop off. He hasn't had any in 8 years, and prior to that, there was a gap of 10 years, 10 years. My math is a little off, but anyhow. So we see the growth in Mr. Martinez. I think he's come here today and expressed appropriate remorse and regret. He has a lot of insight into the behaviors then, what led to this horrible offense that he committed. And I think he genuinely wanted to change before he even knew he was coming for this parole hearing. You have a 60-year sentence, and there's not a whole lot of reason to be hopeful, but he found a way to turn it around during this incarceration and even help others. He has a large support system. I mean, his supporters include Department of Corrections staff, as well as leaders in the community in their professions, and previously incarcerated individuals who have turned it around and are now giving back to the community. He has family support. He has a job waiting for him. So I think you know, when we look at what this public act has charged the Board of Pardon and Paroles to do, you look at the criteria, and his attorney spelled it out nicely. I think given the substantial rehabilitation that he's undergone, there is a reasonable probability to live and remain in the community without violating the law. And I do happen to agree that the benefit to society with a release outweighs the benefit to further incarceration. There's nothing more for Mr. Martinez to do in there, but he has a lot to offer the community should he go out there and give back like he states that he plans to do. I think in this case, we find that there is a diminished culpability because at the time, he wasn't a rational thinking adult. So I think he meets the criteria, and I think he goes above and beyond that. I think he has really done the work and prepared himself for a successful reentry to the community. And I would be in favor of granting parole today. Ms. Chance?
So, Madam Chair, I agree absolutely with everything that you said. I had 8 things listed on my paper here. And basically, in listening to his response, what reasonable efforts he made to demonstrate that he can live and remain at liberty without violating the law. What benefit he would gain to society. He answered that. How would he benefit from release today? That he has demonstrated remorse. His maturity, how he has grown from 18 to 48 now. And whether he has contributed to the positive welfare of others, meaning other inmates. And he's done that, through his peer mentorship. What efforts he has made to overcome whatever trauma, lack of education, or obstacles that he has as a child or youth in an adult facility, and what he did with the opportunities at rehabilitation, whether he has met that. And for me, Madam Chair, he has met all of those. So,
Thank you. Mr.
I
Moore.
agree with you both.
Okay. Let's see, for conditions, we have a Damaris Williams halfway house and mental health evaluation and treatment if it's deemed necessary. Anything further?
I had no else.
I had that, but I crossed out because he hasn't.
2037. I mean, we could. I mean,
I think what I've heard is sufficient.
Yeah.
all right, anything further?
Madam Chair, real quick.
Yes.
Just hold me correct. It is 2 years of unconditional discharge.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, in the matter of Luis Martinez, inmate number 228655, I'll move to grant parole effective April 23rd, 2025, with the following additional conditions. You're to have no contact with your co-defendant, Damaris Williams. You'll participate in a mental health evaluation and treatment if it's deemed necessary, and you'll parole to a halfway house. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Martinez, you will get a list of standard parole conditions. These are special conditions that we've added to it. Be patient while they look for a halfway house, but it's on or after April 23rd, so a couple months away. We wish you the best. Keep working on yourself and go out there and give back to your community. We want to hear about the positive things that you're doing, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for your participation.
Thank
Good luck,
you.
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. This concludes the public act 23-169 hearing for Luis Martinez, number 228655. It is 11:42 p.m. or a.m.
Thank you.